If you're joining us for the first time, I'm Nicole Mullins, and this is Zach Staples, and we're two of your co-hosts for Hack the Machine. We are so excited to be back here today for day 2 of competition, but let's see if our San Diego team is ready to go. Joe, are you there?
Morning, Joe.
Hey, good morning, Hack the Machine. It's great here in San Diego, and we're having a beautiful morning already. Can't wait to see what the day brings us.
Awesome.
It's going to be exciting, my man. We'll be back out to you in a little bit for a couple updates. Hey, yesterday was a great kickoff, complete with VIP guests, all the excitement of forming teams and engaging with our Hack the Machine community. Today is going to be even better.
Are you talking about all of the activity and the challenges? Because I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited to hear what accomplished at that workshop and how that bug bounty is going.
Yeah, I am talking about that a little bit, but there is a lot more going on today.
Oh.
One of the things I think is exciting is the Chief of Naval Research kind of gave us a preview of his vision for the future related to the digital challenges we have, as well as some of the platform challenges like Captain Small and our sponsors were talking about yesterday.
Yeah.
So we've got that coming up. That's going to be a keynote address live on the Hack the Machine feed at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And not only is this his first time presenting the material, but we're going to have audience interaction via Slido to ask questions and engage with him right after the speech. I think I'm pointing it the right direction, but it should be the link right there to get into the Slido now, get your account set up. It's going to be a really interesting opportunity to have a direct conversation with the Chief of Naval Research about his vision for reimagining the naval future.
Well, so I'm super excited about that. So what's the speech about?
See, you always want me to tell you what it's about.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna ruin the surprise. But he did yesterday give us some highlights,
Okay.
right? And so I think it's worth kind of refreshing people's memories so they know what to look forward to. He told us he's gonna highlight a challenge to reimagine naval power, and that reimagination has to be aligned to a worldview appropriate for the digital age. He talked about this idea of a strategic hedge for an alternate future. That if we have a primary thing that we're doing, we need to also consider what the toolkit would look like if the future bends in a different direction. He's calling that a strategic hedge.
Okay.
So I'm really excited to see how he defines that. And lastly, he's referring to this idea of a novel naval formation. You know, we've had submarine squadrons, destroyer squadrons, carrier strike groups, expeditionary strike groups, but those formations have been relatively constant. We had the same types of formations, right? So he's going to come up with present a new idea about that. So I think it's going to be about fundamental change, Nicole.
That's awesome. Makes you want to get back in uniform?
No, a lot of things make me want to get excited and do the uniform. I like to run on my own, though. No more PRTs for me. So I'm good with that.
Well, what I love about Admiral Selby is his energy and his enthusiasm. If you want to be challenged, he's going to make you think and he's going to make you get to work.
That's true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And that's what good leaders should do, right? And if they aren't making the work challenging, then when they do make it challenging, you get inertia. And I'm always glad to work with leaders that push the envelope and then provide kind of the vision and the resources, which is really what this is about. We've been so fortunate, and we did a retrospective with Admiral Selby yesterday. Mm-hmm. But the provenance of Hack the Machine, but when he was the Chief of Naval Research, really goes all the way back to Navy Cyber Warfare Development Group. And so we've got some of the core leadership from cyber here with us today.
That's right.
That really harken back to kind of what originally got us started.
Yep, and you know what? It's just a reminder that Admiral Selby is not the only naval leader that is excited about getting change into the Navy, that they're not the only engaged ones. We had people here on the stage yesterday, and today we have a special guest here, that just proves the Navy's not standing still. So let's welcome our guest, Mr. Christopher Cleary, who is the let me try to get this
Welcome
right.
aboard, Chris. It's a new job, right? So you're
right.
going to
It is a new
Department
job,
of the Navy Principal Cyber Advisor.
Yes.
Yeah? Awesome. Welcome to Hack the Machine.
Thank you for having me.
So first off, we used the word yesterday on the show where we tried to introduce everybody who may or may not be familiar with the Navy to the difference between Navy and Naval. And that Naval is the Navy Marine Corps.
Correct.
So when you're the Department of the Navy Principal Cyber Advisor, like what's the scope of that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the Principal Cyber Advisor, it's only been around for about a year.
Okay.
The brainchild started back in 2014 when they appointed a Principal Cyber Advisor at the OSD level.
Okay.
And then in 2020...
Wait. I have a no acronyms policy on
Oh,
there.
all right.
So what's OSD?
So the Office of Secretary of Defense.
So that's the Department of Defense.
Department of Defense.
Okay, got it.
There is a Principal Cyber Advisor that lives at the Department of Defense level, and that started about 7 years ago. And then in the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, so no acronyms, they said, hey, each of the services should stand one up. So the Department of the Army, the Department of the Air Force, the Department of the Navy, each appointed principal cyber advisors for their respective service. And the scope of the job is almost as the name would imply. First of all, to advise the Secretary. In my instance, it also includes the Commandant of the Marine Corps and the Chief of Naval Operations.
Right.
Although our Chief of Naval Operations is a former Fleet Cyber Commander,
Yeah.
so he doesn't need a ton of advising, but it's going to be a perpetual thing. The PCA should live on for, beyond me, obviously.
Yeah.
And then we weigh in on basically, how are we doing executing the DoD cyber strategy? So it's really the overseer, the implementer, the kind of maybe the checksum to if we're implementing strategy or not. And then there's this other piece where we weigh on the adequacy of the cyberspace activities budget. So there is I think when the job was created, there was a little people in the E-ring that winced a little bit that there was another person in the office that could sort of weigh in on some budgeting things. And I'm learning Pentagon warfare slowly, but that is the language of the Pentagon, which is money. So there is a component of the budget that where the PCA falls in as well.
Sure, let's talk about that a little bit. So, cyber as a competency of the military is new, right? And I mean, we've got these small unmanned systems behind us. We've got a cast out to Ghost here, our ship here at Naval X. But fundamentally, Congress appropriates money through the National Defense Authorization Act. It comes down to the service secretaries to execute those budgets. And it's kind of, it's a zero-sum game, right?
Yeah.
And so in order to create a cyber force, that's not a free thing. And so your job is, I think what you said, is kind of looking at that, how the pie is.
Yeah, and to break it down into three fundamental boxes, there's a new cyberspace taxonomy that's coming that we're all trying to stay aligned with when it comes to how we're resourcing these dollars. But it fundamentally breaks down into three areas. Yeah. You've got cybersecurity. And cybersecurity is the thing we've been doing for a long time. Enterprise system, traditional information technologies, we've always kind of thought about it for, let's say, the last 20 years.
Right.
And then we begin to move into what we're calling cyber resiliency or cyber survivability. And that is mostly how we look at the survivability of things like critical infrastructure, weapon systems, Project Overmatch, autonomous vehicles, all the things you're going to be talking about here in Hack the Machine. And then you move further to the right, you get into cyber warfighting. Okay. This is the cyber mission force. This is the acquisition of offensive and defensive tools that we would use to, deliver effects against our adversaries, when we were called upon to go do those things.
Cool.
So as the PCA, acknowledging where the traditional enterprise IT security world is pretty mature in the Department of Defense. Actually, I give it pretty high marks. And this is where the CIO and I, Aaron Weiss, who I used to work for, so I started out as the Chief Information Security Officer.
Okay, so you were the CISO.
I started as a CISO.
For the Department of the Navy.
For about a year, and then moved into this job. For a whole year, right, for a whole year. Which was the first CISO for the department, and this is the first PCA, so I guess it's my second first, all in 2 years, right? So when the book is written 100 years from now, Chris Cleary will be the first PCA and first Department of the Navy CISO. Okay. Aaron and I work very closely together because there's a hand-in-glove component of this. Aaron is the Chief Information Officer, is responsible for building the environment. That is his job, that is his task. And he's got to make sure that's, in his words, modernized, innovate, and defend. And it's got to be built in a way that it's defendable. Introduced sort of this clash of civilizations, which has been around for about the last 10-ish years. Yeah. You've had this cast of characters that have built and deployed systems. And then you had these troglodytes show up. There were these cyber operators, right? These mouth breathers that didn't understand technology the way that the technologists did, the National Security Agency, CIA, the people that have been living in this world for a long time.
So when you think about that, you're really thinking about, I mean, one of the things I think is fascinating about cyber, and I want to go back and ask a question about each one of those kind of competence areas, like enterprise information technologies, what a lot of people call operational technology resiliency, right? When we talk about systems and these guys hanging here, right? And then that second part is warfighting effects. That is kind of the non-civilian side of that, of course.
What we're here to do.
What we're here to do,
right?
Yeah. So I'll come back to that, but I want to, like the culture, impacts something. And so I think it's interesting for me to have you here, kind of looking over this whole thing, to say that aviation was invented when Orville and Wilbur flew a plane, and then those were adapted into a warfighting asset. But cyber's a little different because the initial capabilities were developed in the intelligence community with National Security Agency and others, and then it kind of rolled from an intelligence capability to a service capability. And I've got to believe that impacts the culture of how this problem is getting sliced.
It does, and one of the things that I think the PCAs are sort of observing, because cyber, for all practice, as a war fighting domain,
Yeah.
And we will use, if we had to put a date on it, we will use the date that the US Cybercom stood up as an organization, October 2010. So we'll say, hey, 10, 11 years ago, cyber as a warfighting function became acknowledged.
Well, that's interesting. It sounds like we're 10 years old.
Yeah,
I mean, that's infancy, really.
It's not to say that we weren't doing those kind of things before US Cybercom was an
Sure.
organization. We absolutely were, but they happened in the shadows.
Right.
You know, there was a time I make the joke, so I started at NSA, US Cybercom, back when it was JFCCNW, Joint Force Component Commander for Network Warfare. Sorry, another acronym. And we used to make the joke that even in the building, we couldn't say the words computer network attack.
Right.
And this was inside of SCIFs, and even it was the words to not be mentioned. Well, then you create US Cybercom, and a couple years later, you acknowledge we have the mission force, and one of their missions is offensive cyber operations.
Yeah.
So it's to infer or imply, hey, we're obviously going to look for capabilities to enable a component of our force that is designed to deliver effects into their adversaries.
So as the nation's military, that only makes sense.
It only makes sense.
And it also fills the bit, the place that people are expecting that. Right. They should know that at some level they might know exactly how it's done, but they should know that we're good at it.
That's right, and we're not going to tell you, we don't tell you how stealth technology works either.
No, we don't.
But you can see airplanes at air shows now, right?
Right, exactly.
We see that stuff, we show it off to one degree or another. But you get back into the sort of it is a zero-sum game when you work in this environment, the way that we're going to dedicate resources and assets to go pursue these kind of things. And you get into the cultural debate. Cyber, to one degree or another, and I'll go out on a limb here because why not?
Yeah.
It's still somewhat.
You're still the new guy.
I'm still the new guy, right? I mean, I can probably get away with a little bit.
Right.
So it's still somewhat of a religion.
Okay.
In the services, right? And there are true believers. I am a true believer. I am a true believer of what cyber can ultimately be as a warfighting capability. But the true believers are in small little pockets.
When you say true believer, you believe that cyber warfare and cyber resilient systems are both vital parts to our ability to achieve a victory in a conflict.
The things that you're figuring out in Hack the Machine, if these systems can't communicate the way they're designed to, they're useless machines.
Right.
And our adversaries would probably much rather disable them, reduce their ability to be effective through non-kinetic means than have to fight them. So again, it's a philosophical change that we're seeing, and I really fundamentally agree with Admiral Selby's going with this idea of, and he'll talk about it in a little bit.
Yeah.
Cyber is a key component of that. Now, so I have the advantage of having cyber in my title, so I have some laser focus on this, but acknowledge that we're trying to do cyber within a naval service that has not recognized this as a traditional means and methods of warfare until very recently. So how we go about, man training and equip our forces, present forces US Cybercom. But when you take that, I take the lexicon of the, security, resiliency, warfighting. The warfighting side still happens in the shadows a little bit. We're acknowledging that a little bit better. We're definitely acquiring capabilities to enable that mission. But then you get into the thing that is still very visible, which is really kind of the intent of what you guys are doing here, which is hack the machine. Critical infrastructure, weapon systems, our ability to make those survivable.
Right.
At the end of the day, I used to say, security seen through the lens of what we've traditionally done is, in the end of the day, you secure your building, you lock it. Right. But if I show up with a sledgehammer, I'm getting in. And then you start moving into defense. But if the building's designed to be attacked, I build it differently, right? Maybe it's not a glass door on the front, it's a steel door on the front.
Right.
And so I'll build certain resiliency or survivability into that. But one of the fundamental design characteristics of all of our weapons platforms since their inception was that some adversary wanted to put them at the bottom of the ocean or shoot them out of the air. I mean, and now our adversaries are figuring other ways to make our systems less survivable by delivering non-kinetic effects to them, to the same end state. If I can, if you read the 2034 book, Admiral Stavridis's, the cyber attack, which he didn't really get into in too much detail, disables a bunch of ships. It just worked. To which point the adversary comes in with kinetic effects and sinks a bunch of Arleigh-Burke destroyers.
Yeah.
That keeps me up at night because those things have at least been.
That can't work. We have to make it so that can't work, right? So
when we look at the way we're designing our systems now, I will say that we are doing a really good job for new systems that come out of the gate of putting cyber survivability as a key mission component of that platform, where 20 years ago, we didn't. So there's some systems we're trying to backfill security onto, and I get it, we're going to do that.
You know, we have $1 trillion of fixed assets in weapon systems.
But I would use the analogy I use is for anybody who's bought a new home right now.
Yeah.
If you've bought a new home, I'm sure when you were buying that home, the real estate agent didn't ask you how much you wanted to spend on the heating and cooling package.
Right.
Or did you want the electricity package in your house? It's a fundamental, I mean, that's how we build homes today.
Yeah.
And 20 years from now, I'm sure solar is not going to be an option. Solar is probably built into your roof. It's just a key fundamental component if we're going to do that. So, you know, I'm pushing the believe button that as we make these systems, we are going to continue to add key attributes to them that make them cyber resilient, cyber survivable, which then means then I can focus more attention on the way that I'm going to deliver effects against my adversary. So let's get the housekeeping done. Let's make sure that we are as resilient or survivable as possible, because that in itself is a form of deterrence. If this is your opening move, you know, key adversary, degrade my ability and lower my confidence level of the systems and things that I've put in the ocean, if I can be every bit as confident in their ability to operate, that is one more level of deterrence that I have, because, hey, I will show up to the fight. I'm not worried about your non-kinetic things. I'm ready to come. I'm survivable. I'm hard to kill.
So let's go back to that. In order for people to dedicate the time, the effort, the engineering, the people, the resources to make that real, it might go back to this kind of true religion, true believer discussion. So we got off a little bit, but let's go back to that for a minute. So you're a believer. You believe
I'm a true believer
that cyber and cyber resiliency and cyber warfighting effects will be an important part of an American victory at some conflict we all hope we never have to fight. Tell me about the other camps, right?
So, you know, traditionally...
And don't name anybody.
No, of course I won't name anybody, right? You know, we both went to the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
We both read Mahan and Clausewitz and Sun Tzu, and we grew up with a certain way that we envisioned warfare. We're moving beyond some of that, and granted, it's hard to change your core belief system on the way that a naval service is going to fight. I tip my hat to the Marines, to General Berger, the Commandant of the Marine Corps. He's really re-envisioning the way the Marine Corps is going to fight as a service.
It most certainly is. Yeah.
They're not going to carry heavy tanks around. They're going to be small, mobile. They're fundamentally re-embracing what it is to be a maritime force, because he sees it hand in glove with the Navy, and they're fundamentally acknowledging that the way that they're going to fight potentially in the Pacific is different. And he's reshaping his service to do that. The Navy is also in the process of sort of re-envisioning what warfare is. And I think Admiral Selby's vision of what that's going to look like in the future is a key component of it. But acknowledging our adversaries, Chris Cleary's humble opinion, are figuring out ways to fight us the way they want to fight us, not the way we want to fight them.
Well, that's true. I mean, I saw in the U.S. Naval Institute blog the other day, ran a picture of a commercial satellite image of an aircraft carrier target in the middle of their missile range. Right? And you can Google that. I mean, everybody out there can Google that. But clearly, when they have a missile test range in the middle of the desert and there's a picture of an aircraft carrier painted on the
rails,
sand, on rails, so it moves, like that's, you go, oh, they're practicing.
They're practicing.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm sure if we can take a picture of that practicing, they've got to be practicing equally as much in cyberspace.
Yeah, they are. And as the job would imply, that's what keeps me up at night.
Right, yeah. So you've got I think the overwhelming majority of people that haven't dedicated the time to invest into like understanding cyber, I think they're probably, a lot of them are pigeonholed into that cybersecurity idea, that it's about passwords and logins on my laptop and everything else. But what I'm hearing you say is really, that's a third of it.
Yeah, that's a component of it.
That's a component of it. And then there's this operational technology piece, it's the cyber resiliency. And I like the way you described that. Is there any, I mean, just make sure I understand the analogy right. We've done a lot of work on flight survivability. Like one of our chief engineer did his PhD in flight survivability. Is everything we thought about, like how does this asset perform under fire, is what we're talking about here, but it's digital fire almost.
Yeah, it is, because again, I'll say it again, it's this new means and methods of warfare. It's, so I started my career in the Navy as a Hornet maintainer, actually. I was an avionics technician, worked on F-18s. Which was neat, right? I mean, you get to run on the flight line, do that. But all of the maintenance checks that we did on those aircraft, this was 30 years ago, were all about, is the thing going to fall out of the sky? Do the engines work? Do the ailerons work? Or the navigation system up to speed? at that time, we weren't thinking about cyber survivability. You know, what's an inject during a maintenance update that somebody could push into the system that, you know, that will trigger some malware at some predetermined time that will turn off its weapons, you know, its weapons platform, you know, or the way that it's going to deliver ammunition. So that's got people up at night now, right? And,
and we got to fix that.
And can I do that when it's flying in the air? Can I push something into a sensor that's just always receiving information to, you know, degrade a weapon system's ability to do what it's designed to go do?
Right.
And I think we have everybody's attention now. Again, fundamentally through things like Hack the Machine, you've got everybody's attention. The trick is after the exercise, after I've grabbed the attention, is to then, okay, now are we learning lessons from this? Are we really going to, you know, incorporate the things that you're discovering here back into the way that we're going to develop these systems? And
I worry about this. I have a not nice name for it. I call it innovation theater, where we do something, we do a big thing, we get everybody's attention, and then we have a series of briefings after that, and not a series of investments.
Yeah.
One of my colleagues says says that the United States has the most impressive demos in the world, and China has a larger fleet. And I think we demoed and seen and a lot, and then it's about that taking action afterwards.
Yeah. I think things like Admiral Selby is going to give a vision of the future.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, where is the horizon that we should be shooting for, and all the things required. It's not just cyber. It's not just aviation. It's not just subsurface warfare. Yes, granted, I'll go. I can rant about cyber because it's in my title, and I can be laser focused on one thing. But as a guy who grew up in the environment that, you know, worked on airplanes and then was a ship driver after the Naval Academy and became an intelligence officer and have bounced back and forth between industry, you know, I can at least say that as laser focused as I am on this one thing, I'm not ignorant to what the Navy is.
Got to be.
You know, it's not going to be we need to get rid of all of our ships and just go to a completely cyber force. I mean, that's of course never going to happen, nor would I recommend or advise that ever happened. But we have to recognize this is a new means and methods of warfare as a domain of warfare. And again, the people within this domain are all believers.
Right.
But if I asked, I kind of make, you know, we all grew up in the Naval Academy, right?
Yeah.
We could name every ship, every airplane, every whatever. But if I went to the surface warfare community and said, can you name me 3 cyber tools?
Good luck.
They'd be like, could you name me the composition of the mission force? But I could tell you what the composition of a carrier battle group is, because it was part of our culture. We grew up knowing all that stuff.
Right. Okay.
So as we bring in other means, just to make the rest of the Navy aware of, hey, you know, you do have this thing called the Cyber Mission Force. You know, this is something that we are going to figure out how to integrate into maneuver. And like any other weapons system, the invention of the submarine, the invention of the airplane, it took a while to figure out how to fully integrate that capability into joint operations.
Right.
And there's a really good book written by these 2 Chinese colonels called Unrestricted Warfare, where they learned from watching us in the first Gulf War.
Yes.
How we went to a joint environment. We really, and this was the first time the U.S. military really figured out how to operate as a joint force, and they learned a lot of lessons from that.
That's true.
And now, as we bring in new ways to conduct warfare, it is operating sort of independently for a time because the regular warfighting community hasn't fully embraced it or understand it yet.
And should they embrace it before they see it?
It's got to be proven. It's got to be credible, right? So I got onto this point of there's the credibility of this as a capability. Well, we're giving the credibility to our adversaries because we're doing things like Hack the Machine. Right? We understand that our adversaries are good at this. But our own capabilities to do similar things to them, our rest of our warfighting community has to see that as credible, because then they get integrated into the way that we're going to fight as a naval force moving forward. So there's some onus on this whole community to continue to, you know, preach the gospel, right? And drive this belief system into the areas that have traditionally have their own religions: air warfare, undersea warfare, surface warfare, and the way we're going to fight our adversaries. This is just the new member of the team, and we've just got to figure out how to integrate it.
One more question for the new member of the team. You've been in the job for years. You've been in the job for a year, thinking about watching this for a long time, of course. What's one, maybe the top priority you have for this year, and not just how might we help you, but how might the entire kind of maritime digital community that we've been building through this, that help?
I think